Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Dr. Kenyon Hackworth. Today I'm going to talk about the 3 keys to building wealth through investing. Before I get started, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe and hit that like button. I would greatly appreciate it. It will help the channel because I'm trying to grow my channel, and it will also help other people to get this information. Warren Buffett was asked one time in one of his shareholder meetings if he can start over again in his early 30s, what would he do differently or the same to gain a net worth of $30 billion, which it was at that particular point in time. His first response was start young. He made the example that he had built this wealth because he had started building this snowball on the top of a very long hill. And the way to do that is to either start very young or live to be very old. And he used the snowball because compound interest behaves like a snowball. Sticky snow, the more it rolls, the bigger it gets. And it's the same way with investing. So he said start young. And he often talked about how he bought his first stock when he was 11 years old. And as I began to study Warren Buffett, and I learned this in 2018 when my daughters were 9, 7, and 4, we opened up a custodial account and we bought them their first stock at that particular time because I realized they had age or they had time on their side. So we initially bought them 2 shares of Disney, which is no longer in their portfolio, but that's a different story for a different day. Because one of the things that happens is the time aspect of it. So if you look at it from a time standpoint, let's say you started out with $10,000 and you invested $300 a month. You did that for 20 years at an 8% compound annual growth rate. At the end of 20 years, you would have $211,000. If you did the same thing, the same amount, $10,000, and you invested $300 a month, but you did it for 40 years at the same compound annual growth rate of 8%, then at the end of 40 years, you will have $1.1 million. So time is a big factor when it comes to building long-term sustainable wealth through investing. So you have the time aspect of it. The other 2 we'll talk about are going to be your dollars that are invested and your compound annual growth rate. So your 3 keys are going to be time, dollars invested, and your CAGR, which is your compound annual growth rate. Let's say we take the same $10,000. We invested 3. We're going to keep the amount same. So we're going to keep the time frame same, 40 years. On this time, we're going to change the second one, which is the dollars invested. So you take $10,000, you invest $300 a month, you do it for 40 years at 8% rate of return. At the end of 40 years, you will have $1.149 million. Okay? You take the same amount to start with, 10,000, but you're changing the dollars invested per month to $500 per month. The length of time is the same, 40 years, so you're not changing that. And the compound annual growth rate of 8% is the same also. So the only thing you're changing is the dollars invested. That's the second key. So the time stays the same. The compound annual growth rate stays the same at 8%. But $10,000, $500 a month for 40 years at 8% would be $1.77 million. So that's roughly about $600,000 more just by investing more money. Now, for me, I didn't start investing until later, until 33. So what I recognize is that I don't have the same time on my side to build up that long hill. So I have to make up for it in one of these last 2 ways, either dollars invested or compound annual growth rate, because those are the 2 ways to make up that difference, the dollars invested and the compound annual growth rate. So this time we're going to look at the third factor. We're going to keep the dollars invested the same. The time is going to stay the same, but we're going to change the compound annual growth rate, which I think is one of the bigger keys. So in this example, you have $10,000. You're investing $300 a month for 40 years at 8% compound annual growth rate. At the end of 40 years, you would have the $1.149 million. Now let's say you change the compound annual growth rate to a higher number, let's say 12%. You're going to have the same $10,000, investing $300 a month for 40 years. So my oldest now is 15, so that'll put her at 55. So for $10,000 a month, $300 a year, or $300 a month, and for 40 years at 12% compound annual growth rate, then you end up with $3.69 million. So you end up with a whole, basically $2.5 million more by having a higher compound annual growth rate. So as I understood that, for me, because of the time factor, I had to do two different things. I had to invest more, and I had to have a higher compound annual growth rate for myself really to catch up. So I set a goal 8 years ago as I began to understand compounding and the rate that your money compounds. I set a goal to compound my money at 15% a year, because there's a huge difference. You can see just in 8% versus 12%. So I set a goal for 15% 8 years ago. And since that particular point in time, since December 31st, 2016, which can be measured through Charles Schwab, through August 16th of 2024, my compound annual growth rate is 23.42%. So I have surpassed the compound annual growth rate that I looked at. I personally believe that the compound annual growth rate is a far superior aspect. If you can get a higher compound annual growth rate, you will make up for not being able to have as a longer amount of time, or not being able to have the amount of dollars to invest. Let's say you're looking at something, let's say 25 or 30 years out. I'm going to start, let's say hypothetically, you have $100,000. Let's say, okay, 8 years ago I was 42. Let's say 25 years, I'm thinking that's me at age 67. So let's say hypothetically I had $100,000, and I looked at it and I did the math, and I said, okay, if I average 8%, that means my money would double every 9 years. So it's the rule of 72. 72 divided by the growth rate tells you how long it takes for your money to double. So at 8%, 72 divided by 8 is 9. That means it would double every 9 years. Let's say I had $100,000. I didn't put any more money in, but I just averaged 8%. That means that my money would double 3 times. In 9 years, it would double from $100,000 to $200,000. By year 18, it would double from $200,000 to $400,000. And then by year 27, which is 9 times 3 is 27, it would double from $400,000 to $800,000. Now, if I took the same thing and I averaged 15%, technically it's less than 15%. It's really around 14.4%. That means that my money would double every 5 years. So in 25 years, that is 2 years less, my money would double 5 times. So it would double from $100,000 to $200,000, $200,000 to $400,000, $400,000 to $800,000, $800,000 to $1.6 million, and $1.6 million to $3.2 million. So that's me doing the math in my head. So my goal, I set out and I said, let me see if I can average 15% rate of return. And my rate of return is higher. So now in my mind, I said, okay, well, let me see what it would be worth in 25 years if I average 18%. 18% means your money doubles every 4 years. So 4 years, let's say in 28 years. So the first scenario was doubling every 8 years. So in 27 years, it would double 3 times because it doubles, 8%, because it doubles every 9 years. The second one was 14.4, or let's say 15%, just to round it to a number. So it would double every 5 years. So in 25 years, it would double 5 times. So if I average 18%, it will double every 4 years. So that means that over a 28-year period, if it's doubling every 4 years, that means it would double 7 times. You get it? 28 divided by 4 is 7. So let's say I'm starting with that same $100,000 8 years ago, and I'm averaging 18% rate of return. That means it's going to double every 4 years. So the first double is going to double from 100,000 to 200,000 by year 4, 200,000 to 400,000, 400,000 to 800,000. That's the third double. That's by year 12. 800,000 to 1.6 million, 1.6 million to 3.2 million. That's the fifth year. So that's by year 20. We're looking at $3.2 million. And I still have two more doubles. So 3.2 million to 6.4 million by year 24, and then 6.4 million to 12.8 million by year 28. So the compound annual growth rate and being able to grow your money at a higher rate can make up for the fact if you are a late starter like I was. And also it could benefit my daughters who are also, even though they start early, if they have a higher compound annual growth rate, because I invest for them the same way I invest for myself, which is to buy high quality businesses that are run by good management, and then I leave them alone and I allow management to run the business. I watch them. Every quarter they release their earnings. I can see how the business is doing. I don't sit there and stare at my computer. I don't sit here and jump. I don't trade in and out of stocks. I don't move money around. I invest in. It's like planting trees, if you will. If you plant an apple tree, it can take 6 to 10 years before that tree starts bearing fruit. If you plant a tree, an apple tree or apple seed, and you go out in 3 weeks and be like, man, this apple tree is not bearing any fruit, I'm going to dig it up and move it and go plant it into a different spot. Or 3 months go by, he's like, man, I'm going to move it up again and go plant it to. All you're doing is hurting yourself. And it's the same way when you constantly moving money around, or when you're paying somebody else to move money around. They benefit. You might not benefit, but they will. So the 3 keys again, before I don't want to keep going on, but the 3 keys are time. The earlier you start, the less money you have to invest. So if you're watching this and you're just starting out in the workforce, it doesn't require a whole bunch of money to build wealth over time. The second one is the dollars invested. You can increase the how fast the money grows by adding more dollars to the amount that you invest each and every month. And the third one, which I think is probably the superior one, that can compound and make everything work together, is your CAGR, or your compound annual growth rate. If you can learn how to grow your money at a high rate, and you have the time and the dollars to go with it, you can build a sustainable amount of long-term wealth. And my objective is to build generational wealth through investing. And that's what Healthy Wealth U is about. It's about building generational wealth. And for me to build up or average this rate of return over 8 years, it took a lot of study, and I simplify. Investing should be simplified. It's not difficult. I don't make it any more difficult than what I think it should be. And I try and simplify it as much as possible. And that's what this channel was about. So make sure you share this information. Log on. Make sure you subscribe, like, share this information, and we can all build wealth together. All right. So I will talk to you soon. Have a great day. Don't forget those 3 keys, and get a notebook so you can write down information as you learn it. I have 3 notebooks now where I have written down every single investment that I have made for the last 5 years, and also different notes and things that I've learned. That is going to be more important than just the dollars I can build and lead to my children. The information that I can lead to my children, so they can go on and they can create wealth for their children, and keep on doing it for generation after generation. The information is what's important. Learn the information. All right. So I will talk to you soon. Have a great day.